Have you ever wondered how big the world is? Have you visualized it like a traveler? Let me take you on a journey around the world. Now today's video may sound like a beginner's geography class, but trust me, by the end of it, you will look at the world from a traveler's lens. Let's look at the world map. The world has been divided into 7 continents. On the left here we have Americas, Northern America and Southern America. Now North America has 23 countries, of which 21 of them lie in a subpart called Central America. Only US and Canada are countries which are not part of Central America and are huge in size. Now coming to Central America, most of these countries are Spanish speaking countries. There are a lot of islands. Some of the famous ones are Mexico, Guatemala, Costa Rica and others. In the south, we have 12 countries that make up South America. Brazil is the largest country and is Portuguese speaking. Guyana is English, Suriname is Dutch, and the rest 9 all speak Spanish. We have Venezuela, Argentina, Colombia, Bolivia, and so on. Across the Atlantic now, on the east, we have Europe on the north and Africa in the south. Let's talk about Europe first. Let's look at Europe. Europe is made up of 45 countries and can be divided into west and east. These countries, Germany, Austria, Italy, they and anything west to it is called Western Europe. These were the imperial powers, the colonizers of the world, the rich countries of Europe. It includes France, UK, Spain, Portugal and the kind. On the east we have a collection of countries which have always oscillated between the powers of Russia on the east and the imperial powers on the west. Some famous ones are Croatia, Poland, Hungary, Greece, Ukraine and the kind. In the south of Europe we have Africa, the continent with the highest number of countries, 54. We divide African countries into North and West Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa and Southern Africa. North and West Africa is very poor. A lot of it is war-torn. The Great Sahara Desert lies here. The area has a history of slave trade and a lot of French influence because French was the colonizer of a lot of countries in the region. To the south starts the wilderness, vast forests of Africa. Here we have countries like Kenya, Tanzania, Ethiopia, famous for their safaris. You go further south and you see a lot of island nations of Africa and all the countries impacted by the trade through the Cape of Good Hope. Some of the countries are Africa, Namibia, Madagascar, Mauritius and so on. To the east of Europe and Africa, we have the largest continent of the world, Asia. We divide Asia into 5 parts. It has 45 countries. We have North, West, South, Southeast and East Asia. North Asia has an amalgamation of the Silk Route influence, the European influence and the rise of Islam in the region. Some popular countries from the region are Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Russia, Turkey, Georgia and so on. West Asia, also known as Middle East, has a lot of Islamic monarchies, exuberantly rich countries, a lot of oil wealth. Some of these countries are Saudi Arabia, Iran, Israel, Qatar, UAE and so on. In South Asia, we have us, India and its neighbors, Nepal, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Myanmar, Maldives and so on. Southeast Asia is India's favorite travel destination. We have countries like Thailand, Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia and so on. East Asia has the modern Asian powers of Japan, China, Korea, Taiwan and so on. The 6th continent is Australasia and Oceania. It's a group of 14 islands, of which Australia is the largest island, followed by New Zealand. Some other prominent countries are Papua New Guinea, Fiji, Palau, Samoa and so on. And let's talk about the 7th continent now, which is Antarctica. Antarctica has no permanent settlements. It is only inhabited by seals, penguins and researchers. Though one can visit Antarctica from South Africa or Argentina, there are no demarcated countries in the region as such. With this, we have divided the world into 14 travel blocks. North America, Central America, South America, West Europe, East Europe, North and West Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, Southern Africa, North Asia, West Asia, South Asia, Southeast Asia, East Asia, Australasia and Oceania. Next, I would like to bring in the concept of temperature and time with regards to how we travel. We all must have studied about the imaginary lines that we draw called latitudes and longitudes. If you don't remember, let me give you a refresher. Latitudes are imaginary lines which run horizontally across the globe. The central line, the longest, is called the equator. Countries around the equator see little variance in temperature year round, and the further you go, the colder it gets. So this also impacts the kind of plant and animal life that region has, the architecture and sightseeing, food and clothing of that place. If you look at countries like Ecuador, Colombia, Kenya, Indonesia, they all lie very close to the equator and have similar temperature year round. Whereas New Zealand, Norway, Iceland, South Africa, these countries get really cold in their winters and not so hot during their summers. Countries around the equator can be visited year-round, whereas countries away from the equator are pleasant to visit in summers. Now let's come to the vertical imaginary lines that run around the globe, which are called longitudes. There are 360 longitudes, and unlike latitudes, there is no longest longitude. All are of the same length. So we've marked the international date line as a longitude which runs across the Pacific Ocean. This is where any new day starts. In a day, there are 24 hours, which means 1440 minutes. Like I said, there are 360 longitudes. Since the Earth rotates west to east, there must be a time in which each longitude would receive sunlight or would lose sunlight. So 1440 divided by 360 is 4 minutes. So in every 4 minutes, time increases as per the longitude. So for example, the time starts at this international date line, which is close to the Kiribati Islands. On the right side of these lines is the island of Hawaii. So say if it is 10 am on 4th October in Kiribati, it will be 10 am in Hawaii on 3rd October. So there's a 24-hour time difference between the two. And lastly, coming to the concept within a country. Did you know in India, if we look at the western point of Gujarat and the eastern point of Arunachal, there are some 30 longitudes that pass through the country. Now 30 into 4 minutes is 120 minutes. So there's a 2-hour gap between Gujarat and Arunachal in real time. Now but a country can't have 30 time zones. To make things uniform, India has adopted the longitude that passes through Allahabad as the central longitude for the whole country. So the time in Gujarat versus Arunachal is standardized through this longitude, which is at GMT plus 5.5 hours. All other places in the world will have a time somewhere in between the two. Now, to further break this, the 24-hour time gap that the world sees at the same point of time is divided by a concept called GMT or Greenwich Meridian Time. Now, totally opposite to the international date line is the Greenwich Meridian line, which passes through London in UK. What we've done, anything that is east of it will be added by 12 hours considering GMT is 0, and anything on the west will be subtracted from the GMT. So if the GMT time in London is 0, the time in Europe, Asia, Africa and Australia will be GMT plus a few hours, while in the Americas it will be GMT minus a few hours. The Indian time is GMT plus 5.5 hours. Now that you know how the world looks and how the structure of the globe creates temperatures and time, you must agree that it's so huge that it gets confusing to decide where should I go next. Let me help you answer that by just 3 questions. First, ask yourself, how long are you planning to go for? What is the duration of the trip? Now the duration can be classified into either a short trip 0 to 4 days, a medium trip 5 to 8 days, a long trip 9 to 14 days, or a very long trip more than 2 weeks. Basis the distance and the cost of both time and money, assuming you're flying from India, this chart with concentric circles help you make a decision. So if you're going for a short trip, trips to Southeast Asia, South Asia or West Asia make sense. If you're going for a medium trip, you can visit Eastern Europe, Northern Asia, East Asia. If you're going for a long trip, do visit Africa, Western Europe or Australia. And if you're going for a very long trip, South America and North America are great options. I hope that makes sense. Now let's come to the second question. Ask yourself, what time of the year are you planning this trip? Now there can be 2 types of seasons. One could be the tourist season, one could be the temperature wala season. So talking about the tourist wala season first. Now every country has a peak season where it sees a huge influx of travelers. It also has an off season where things are less crowded. The chart on the screen helps you understand what happens in each of the regions of the world. If you look at the cyan color line, this is the peak season. Things are crowded, everything's expensive, but at the same time weather is excellent, all sightseeing is open. On the other hand, the red color shows you months of off season. Things will be inexpensive, uncrowded, but temperature would be really bad. It would be either too cold or too hot, and a lot of sightseeing might be closed due to this. I think the sweet spot is the yellow region, where it's the best of both worlds. Most sites are open, temperature is quite good. At the same time, crowds and expense are also limited. Talking about the other type of season, the second chart here shows you temperature in these regions across months. If you look at the yellow and green periods, these are the most ambient temperatures to visit a place in. These are temperatures between 13 to 24 degrees Celsius. If you look at the hotter regions, which is orange and red, it is for people who don't want to go during peak summers of that country. Or look at at the cyan and blue regions. These are very cold times in that country and should be avoided by travelers who don't want to bear that cold. The last question that you should ask yourself is, what kind of budget am I planning for this trip? Now, budget can be loosely demarcated into two heads. One is the fixed cost and the second is the PPP based cost. The fixed cost largely includes flights and visa. Flights and visa itself comprise 25 to 30% of your overall trip budget, and you can't do much about it because if you have to go to a particular country, you can't create a new flight or change visa rules. So this is a cost that you will have to bear. On the other hand, what is a PPP cost? It is called purchasing power parity cost. Let me explain. Things in India are much cheaper than things in Singapore, you must have heard. For example, a meal in India would cost say 500 rupees, whereas in Singapore it may cost 3 times 1500 rupees. So each country has a PPP index. The next chart shows you what is the PPP index with regards to Indian expense for these 100 countries. So think of expenses like stay, food, internal movement, etc. that you would have paid for in India, and then use the PPP converter to find the expense you will incur while you are on travel in these countries, and you will get a good estimation of how much to spend or how much to expect to budget for that particular country. Now, with these three factors, duration of the trip, time of the year, and the budget you have prepared, you can decide what your next destination can be. It need not be where your friends have visited, it need not be what the reels you've seen, it could be anywhere in the world. For more such practical travel advice, subscribe and like my channel. See you in the next one.